just to paint the picture, it's it's late winter, about as far north as you can go in Minnesota. You have no cell phone coverage. Everybody you're with has left. You're many, many miles from anywhere, and you have no heat, and your SUV just broke down.
And my SUV just broke down. And
So how you been?
good. A little overwhelmed lately, I'll be honest.
Okay.
New job,
Oh,
um, and learning the ropes there. And then late spring has, caused me to really put it into high gear to get stuff done that I plan on getting done this year. So
cool.
yeah, how about you?
Oh, same as ever. Just work, 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 and try to play a little radio when I can. So, well, thanks for hopping on for this. I'm glad you're doing it, bud.
Yeah,
Um,
no problem.
so what I'm doing is I'm putting together a little series of interviews like this, to kind of go over the fun topic of how much of a service ham radio is today. That's kind of always debated. Uh, everybody knows it's a hobby. That's no getting around it. But how much of a service it is today is where people kind of get into debates and discussions. And some say it's just as much of a service as it ever was. And some people say with modern technology, it's not a service at all. I'm somewhere in between. Um, and I wanted to bring you in on this. One thing because you're a local guy that I know, and we've done Parks on the Air together, and we're belong to one of the same radio clubs and stuff. And on that service aspect, uh, one thing that ham radio definitely is good for is for like public events. Case of mine, the Bear Grease dog sled race, which you participated in, helping out. So I was kind of wanting you to showcase or discuss how amateur radio helps out on the Bear Grease in particular, uh, the harsh conditions of it and the remoteness and everything. And then this year, you definitely had a rememberable event that happened. So I'd like you to go into detail on that if you don't mind, and how ham radio played a part in that. So I'll just kind of shut up now and let you tell the story if you want.
Right. It's so funny that so ham radio for me began in high school, my senior year. I was in electronics 101. We were learning how to etch, design, etch, and then utilize circuit boards for building strobe lights, or we built a TV jammer or other things like that. And my teacher at the time had an old Hallicraft ham radio set up in the back, and a nice big antenna or several up on the roof of the school. And when the shuttle blew up in '87, he was one of the teacher candidates for being on that. I got to listen to everything that happened live, kind of behind the scenes at NASA. He had you can get a direct link and listen to the shortwave stuff and a lot of things that were going on at Mission Control when that was happening. So it was pretty fascinating to me. Obviously, a
Oh,
memorable event. I thought then and there, I'm going to get my ham license. Well, 35 years later, I finally, after two kids and coaching sports and running a business and doing other things, I finally got my license when just right as the whole COVID scenario started happening.
mm-hmm.
It was pretty interesting because I'd made up my mind to take the class and go do it. I'm going to get my technician's license and did all that. But I had no idea that would lead me to, like we talked about, the Bear Grease thing. And it was pretty fascinating for me, my love of animals and dogs in particular, and having raised and trained several dogs, that something that was I've always wanted to go to or see the dog sledding event, but there's never really a good time. It's in the middle of winter. It's in the middle of nowhere. was a perfect excuse for me to utilize my newly learned skills in ham radio to help out that event. So that was where that, led me. And I think that leads a lot of people
Hmm.
that are in ham radio to things that they love. I know you were doing the Berkey the last 2 years. I'm sure you
Yep.
found that to be pretty intriguing and a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's funny. We're a lot of similarities because I too was interested in radio when I was young and never got around to get my amateur license until my mid 40s, and I just kicked myself going, boy, I wasted a good 20 years of having fun with this and getting the knowledge and everything. But yeah, yeah, for sure. And for me, uh working the events like that is a great way to put these skills to use in a real world situation where I'm just not reg chewing on the repeater or checking in on nets or playing parks on the air. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of those things. It's fun and it's great, but uh being part of a net working an event is it just has a different aspect to it. So uh please tell us a little bit more about the bear grease in particular and how amateur radio works in on that, if you
Well,
know.
yeah, and just like you say, just before I did that for the first time, can't remember if I'd done it before or when you and I did that one Parks on the Air. We were just after Christmas there, I think,
Mhm,
and or just before something. But we were out in Wisconsin there in the sloughs area, and bitter cold, not easy to do, setting up out of the back of your Jeep or my car or whatever, and we were, just going to
mhm,
town and making those contacts. But that's real kind of intense, technical, getting that, antenna up and all that. And it's a little bit easier, I would say, with the FM side of it, but still just as technical. And the race is way in the arrowhead, way up in the arrowhead, and it goes deep into the arrowhead of Minnesota, which is for anybody that's doesn't know much about that, it's pretty remote. It's very thickly
mhm,
wooded. It's very hilly, lots of rivers and streams. And in the dead of winter, you cannot be without shelter or warmth or food or water for very long out there, especially the time of year that they do it. So they set up this network of radios along with GPS pucks that each racer takes. There are several legs of the race. I can't think of all the names of them right now, but you've got your juniors or your, younger kids that race for, just a short sprint. And then you have your marathon, and then you have your full race, which takes approximately 3.5 or 4 days to complete.
mhm,
All races are required to stop a certain amount of time. You have to have a certain amount of sleep that your dogs have to get. Vets come from all over the world for these events. That was one of the most intriguing things to me, to see
mhm,
these vets from all over the place, setting up in tents, sleeping on the floor in sleeping bags in gymnasiums, along the race, and just the outpouring of support and the level of care that they give these dogs. Honestly, the mushers are secondary when you see it all happen. Even the
right,
mushers
right,
are getting less sleep than the dogs are, just to care for the animals. Fascinating thing to watch and experience. And then you're also with a bunch of like-minded dog people. And I'm a big, you might not know that part about me, but I'm a pretty big dog person. I keep it to myself, but when but it's me and my dogs, I'm all about them, and I see that in this race. So that aspect of it, keeping everyone safe, because you're out of cell service, you don't know if your cell phone's going to break down, and they really, you lean on yourself a lot to have a lot of redundancy set up for your equipment and to make sure that it's all working properly. And
mhm,
I'm a little bit of I guess a little anal that way. I really like my equipment to work. I like to have redundancies. I'm a less is more kind of a guy when it comes to that kind of technical stuff, and it seems to serve me well.
mhm,
I don't need the fanciest radio, but I do like a good, solid um, performing equipment,
Right.
whether it's old school or not, to keep it going. And I feel I've done very well in keeping it going that way. It's been a lot of fun. And all the guys I work with are the same way. They all seem to be, and a lot of them, you've
Yep.
experienced them, and they're part of a club that we belong to in Isanti County, Minnesota. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And when you talk about that gear, that's uh I definitely with that portable radio that I like to do and backpacking and the camping, it's that constant balance of having enough equipment, enough gear, but not too much, so that you try to
That's
keep things streamlined. So you're constantly adjusting your kit, so to speak, as to finding uh, that you have all the redundancies, that you're doing things safe and you're not risking anything, and you're going to have a good time, but you're not carrying all this extra gear, all this extra weight, all this extra space that's going to slow you down or hinder you. Whether you're backpacking or canoeing or manning a checkpoint at a dog sled race, you don't want to have a bandolier of 16 handhelds on that are getting in the way when you could probably get by with one, but having two is a good idea. Maybe two radios and an extra battery is the way to go. Just pulling random stuff out of my head.
well,
So,
and it's so funny you say that. My backup, I've never the radio that I have, I use a um 65R
mhm,
uh Yaesu, and it is kind of a they call it a glorified Bofang, but I think it's a little bit more than that. It's the first HT ham radio that I actually bought that was legal, not a Bofang or whatever. I
mhm,
bought those just to kind of kick around. Um, it is still probably now I have to say my favorite radio. The thing
yeah,
is just consistently worked, easy to program. The battery, the way the battery lasts in it, I just can't believe it. I
mhm,
bought one backup battery for it. I've never run out of power, and I've run for 17 hours straight one night or one day, and then 16 hours 2 days later, or day and a half later for the next part of the race. And I
right.
never, after recharging, I never had to even change out the battery. I always had enough power at the end of the day, and that's been 2 years straight now doing that. It's been very impressive, that equipment, how it holds up. So I always have improved on my setup a little bit, and I set up in a very remote area. We're gonna get some noise on the radio there. In what's called Mineral Center, which is an old. It must be an old trading post. I don't know all the. There's an old shack there, an old
Mhm,
wood or log shack that is got an old barrel wood stove in there, and it's just tiny, but they get that place just cooking, just gets so warm, and
mhm,
everybody brings, they bring a whole bunch of snacks, and locals chip in with the local restaurants chip in with homemade soups, and then lots of snacks and coffee and hot chocolate, and we just go for about 20 hours. It stays open, and that is a mandatory checkpoint up there, and we are checking in the racers as they're or the mushers as they're coming in, and then checking them out as we're going out. It gets pretty crazy. Both the stops that I do are both mandatory layovers, and there always ends up being a certain amount of mushers coming in and then going out at the same time. So you do
okay,
a lot of running back and forth between the finish line or the stopping line where they take their time, and then the starting point again. It can be very intense. You
sure.
sometimes wonder, why am I volunteering for
Yeah,
this? I can't feel my toes. I can't.
yeah,
And there's a lot of civilians just coming out there working. They started out as people that were just coming to see the race for the first time, and now they come back year after year, that they do timing and other things for the race itself. So it's
sure.
a lot of interesting, fun time. Meet a lot of really neat people that are really into volunteering to make that thing happen.
So to kind of paint the picture, these No, I haven't worked bear grease yet, but in my mind, these checkpoints are kind of like a NASCAR pit lane where uh teams are coming in, teams are leaving, and there's chaos in between with resupplying, checking the dogs over, feeding, watering, that kind of stuff. Now, I imagine you're kind of like on either side of the gates and you're recording bid numbers that come in and checking the conditions of the mushers and the dogs, kind of a once over to make sure there's nothing wrong. Is that the kind of stuff?
It's not. It's boy, it's almost impossible to describe. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
a pit stop at a race is a good way to describe it, except that it's definitely some controlled chaos at times because
Mm-hmm.
you'll have the a racer coming in and then another one leaving sometimes on the same track. It
Sure.
gets really tricky. The dogs are really excited. A lot of times the emotions of the mushers are really high and low. Some of them you can tell they just want to quit.
Mm-hmm.
Others definitely should quit and won't. It's really an interesting experience that just seeing the emotion of it. Lots of local people up there that know the racers and understand the different kennels and where they come from. And I'm only learning more and more of that being my second year that I've done it now.
Mm-hmm.
And or no, I'm sorry, technically my it was my third year. But it's really like you say, the emotions are very high, and it's I don't get to make that call, but we do end up becoming helpful in part of the communicating process because the judges can't always be there. Some of them they'll come and confer and hey, what was going on here? What did this look like here? And I know there were two of the guys that run the snowmobiles that follow the sledders or the follow the mushers as they're going down the trail, and there was a really slow one this year and very unusually slow that these two guys that came in, they were, I've never seen anybody, two guys so angry in all my life because they knew that this person was intentionally being slow for some political reason having to do with the race. I guess I don't really know the story, but
Okay.
those things happen, and
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. It's happened twice now. Last year we had to stay. No, my first year I had to stay at a crossing for a good 8 hours longer than I was supposed to be there because somebody broke down. The
Mm-hmm.
dogs wouldn't go, and she was stranded out there, and she had lost her GPS puck. So we knew that she was out there. We knew the snowmobiles had followed her, but it's one of those things we do as radio operators is you stay at your post
Mm-hmm.
until you're cleared. And you're
Sure.
not cleared until everybody has checked in at their next checkpoint or their next crossing. And it
Okay.
can get really long. You're there for a long time. I know I had to not this last year, but the year before I set up in a small camper now at Mineral Center, and I had to wait till the last guy made it to, or is a gal made it to the next crossing. And I was sitting there dozing off, but I mean, I had been up for over 20 hours straight, just listening. And you're literally just waiting because someone might have to turn back and they need someone there. And both times I've been at Mineral Center, I am the last one there. I wake up in the morning and there is nobody in that parking lot but me.
Okay.
And it's kind of interesting, it goes from just crazy trucks and people and dogs everywhere and sleds and just
Mm-hmm.
the mayhem of it all to you wake up in the morning and it's as if nobody was ever there.
Sure. Kind
Very
of up and down in emotions. I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
got uh 3 points there. Besides the checkpoints that we discussed where the racers come in for mandatory stops and resupplies and all that, uh the other aspect that the amateur radio operators help out is at the road crossings where you're basically on your own uh at a designated spot and you're just double checking that, you know, you're saying in radio communications that, 6 racers have left the checkpoint and you confirmed that, yep, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is, those six racers go by you and on to the next spot. And this is a good point far as where amateur radio is a good backup for technology. As he mentioned, you think on the surface, if all the racers had a GPS sensor on it, it'd be all automated. They could just follow everything on a map, on a Google map from the headquarters and track everything. But those sensors break down. We're in uh seriously extreme conditions. We're talking not wind chill, actual air temperatures of 30, 40 below Fahrenheit. They can freeze up pretty quickly or come loose from the sled. Because I mean, it's a dog sled race going down a bumpy trail. Things fall off. So even with that technology, amateur radio is a good backup. As we're talking about our gear, is a good redundancy to have there. And uh the longevity or the endurance that you have to have as a volunteer. I mean, this is like you said, you're working 10, 15-hour shifts, 20-hour shifts. That's an endurance race for you on your own. And for people who want to get into things like CERT and Aries and races where you might be, in a hurricane or a damaged area, you might be manning a checkpoint or a Red Cross tent for 10-hour shift as well. So you have to have the endurance to do that too. It's not like a Parks on the Air activation where you're out there for a half hour and you get bored or starts to rain and say, "Well, I'm good." You-
Yeah,
you're there and you
that's
gotta
exactly it.
you gotta
Yeah, I mean,
stick up for
you
it.
you made that point perfectly. And I've thought about that exact thing. Boy, if
Hmm.
we were like, and I actually now this last year set up with that mindset. How much extra gas? Well, now even gasoline, as we'll find out later here,
Yeah.
becomes even more important. But how much can I get away with minimally? I do a lot of backpacking and hiking in the Boundary Waters and tenting in the Boundary Waters every fall with my brother and my son and some nephews and other friends. And my brother and I, especially though, my one brother, we have roughed it. We've gone just bare bones in very extreme conditions for fall in northern Minnesota. As you well know what it's like up here
Hmm.
in the North Country, even in just early and late fall. Things change on a dime. And that's helped me in this situation. And I've tested myself, how long can I sleep comfortably in my sleeping bag in my mini camper that I have without any heat?
Hmm.
Can I do it? Can I stay warm with just my body heat and protected and those kinds of things? Because you think about it like in a hurricane or one of those storm conditions where the temperatures can be anywhere from 50 to 80 degrees depending on where you are in the country. It's another world. It's another test when you're doing this with 40 below wind and 40 below wind chill or 50 below wind chill with 20 below normal temperatures, then throw in a snowstorm and you've got
Hmm.
a real world condition where you are now there for the races. You're making sure everyone's coming in. The GPS is all shut down, and that's happened. They've lost pucks, or the satellite that they were using for the pucks didn't link, or the system didn't work at one point. And every year that I've done it so far, the last 3 years, ham radio has proved itself to be
Hmm.
a very valuable resource as a backup or just a primary form of communication for this because of the most interesting part is we set up the network. We have net control that sets up at Bluefin Bay, and then each one of us goes out to our checkpoints at our prescribed times, and then we just start calling in on our we have meetings ahead of time. We know our frequencies. We all have them written down,
Hmm.
and the network is there, and it's one that we use an existing network, and we also build our own, and it's really fun. It's really interesting and fun to see how that actually works in a real world scenario. and then you add in the cold conditions. So it's been every year there's been something where we're like, oh yeah, they're a good one, and then this year it was proved especially valuable for me in
Hmm.
particular.
Yeah.
Something I never thought would happen. So I'm a very prepared guy, and I was not prepared for this, and I did something really stupid that I won't ever make that mistake again.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's how we learn, and hopefully others will learn from this too. I know I did. I
yeah,
was I again, I haven't made it to Bear Grease yet, but when you guys got back and into range of the local repeater, that was all the talk that we're talking about before you made it back.
I wasn't back. I was
Yeah.
there for 3 more days. So
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I heard the chatter, literally heard the radio chatter about what was going on, and I could not wait until our Wednesday night net to hear it from you, and you were still uh stranded, or well, not stranded, but weren't able to get back home. So
right.
let's dive into that tale.
Well, I had purchased, and it was a kind of a dual purchase, a new generator, Honda 2200 I IU or I whatever. It was an inverter. It had a 2000 before. It served me well, but I needed one a little bit smaller than another big one that I have for backup at the home in case of a storm or anything, and something a little bit bigger for this camper for the wife and I when we're out. We like to backcountry camp. We camp in BLM land out west, where you can go on all the federal land you want and find
Mhm.
open spaces and camp to your heart's delight. I've got solar panels, and then I got the generator, and then usually carry enough water and propane to go for at least 4 or 5 days. And well, this generator was going to fit the bill, and I thought, well, what better way to test it out than at Bear Grease and just see what kind of mileage I get out of one tank of fuel and that kind of stuff. So as no matter how prepared you are, there's still a lot of driving. I pull it with a pretty good sized SUV, and I've got 350,000 miles on that SUV, and I keep it very well maintained, and it's been a very trustworthy vehicle for me. I take it anywhere; it always gets me out of stuff. But one thing that I didn't count on was the limited gasoline supply, especially in the midst of COVID. We were in the middle of that whole the whole trucker thing in Canada, so lots of we're right there near the
Mhm.
border crossing, and I ran out of gas. I had 10 gallons of gas, and I'd run out of gas for the generator and the electric heat source that I was using. And something had happened to the furnace in my camper so that I couldn't use my propane furnace. So all I had was the electric heat from the generator, and it was going through the gasoline a lot quicker than I thought it would with that electric heater. That being said, we're in the midst of it. We're really busy, and one of a guy, one of the other ham operators was there, and I had kind of gotten myself set up so that it's really difficult for me to just unhook my truck or my vehicle from the camper without, especially in these cold temperatures. It's really hard to manipulate uh the 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 hitch and the chains and all the other things you hook up. Once you get it good, I especially in Minnesota, I don't like to unhook or I lose my lights or brakes or other things
Right.
like that. So he was running down to get some gas for his generator. I said, well, here, take my can and here's some cash. Get me some gas as well, if you wouldn't mind. We were at that kind of point in the race, and there was enough of us there. There was kind of a lull, and it was only, I think it's 8 miles away was the casino and the gas station. Well, he came back, and I immediately poured the gasoline in my generator, and my generator like immediately died, and I could not get it restarted. And I just was, your mind doesn't go, like, believe it or not, my mind didn't go right to oh, I just poured bad gasoline in there. My mind went to, oh, this was a gas can that I had sitting in the garage for a long time. I think I might have had some stuff in the bottom of it, some dirt or some grit or something. So I, immediately blamed myself and said, "Oh, jeepers!" Tore the generator apart, tore the fuel, emptied all the fuel out of it, did all this stuff, and it was mixed with enough of the good fuel that I had in there that I didn't smell that there was definitely something wrong with this gasoline. Well, there was, never got the generator started again. Luckily, they had an extra generator, and I used that one to keep the heater going for that night. Got all set up for the next morning. I only needed the heat overnight, and they pulled out. They were there early with me. They pulled out. Well, I had this 5 gallons that he had just bought left, and I'm too cheap for my own goods sometimes. And I thought, well, maybe it was the gasoline. I can just pour this into my car. I've got 3/4 of a tank, or immediately after I filled up the truck, and it was 20 below that morning. It was more like 16 or 18 below. It was really cold. No
Mm-hmm.
wind though. My I drive it's a Lexus GX470. It's got a lift kit and bigger tires, and I've kind of built it up a little bit. It's more of a real live utility vehicle. It's a Land Cruiser anywhere else in the world, but they made it a mall crawler for rich housewives in this
Yeah.
country. But I've turned it back into its original state, or the state it should be in my opinion, and it's done well by me. And it immediately started rumbling after I poured that gasoline in the engine, and then she just died and would not restart. And I immediately knew, no, this is definitely the gasoline. And I am now completely screwed because I knew that it wasn't gonna, you could just tell it was not, this vehicle never fails to run or start
Mm-hmm.
as long as I've had it. I've had it for 15 years now. And I just knew, I'm done. And and they had already been gone for a while. I kind of took my time getting set up. So it'd been a good half hour before everyone else had left, or
Okay.
since everyone else had left. And I had packed all my radios away, packed all my gear. Everything was like packed away and ready to go home. I immediately pulled out the radio that I had set up for our network and started calling out
Mm-hmm.
to all the guys I was with. And I was actually pretty surprised I didn't get a call back right away. I didn't hear anybody, and I kept calling, and I was kind of beside myself. I was not in a good way, and it smelled like diesel fuel. That's what the only way I can describe the smell. Even the guys at the shop where I finally got my vehicle to thought the same thing. But I just said, I don't know what's going on. This gas he bought, I don't know if they had the wrong label on it or what. I think it's diesel fuel or something. And I'm stuck up here and I don't know what I'm going to do. And, I was just in a bad way. Well, they immediately, uh, Kyle, especially, Kyle,
Yep.
from our, he went right to his engineering mind that he has and just said, okay, what's going on? This is what we need to do. I'm going to, we'll call here and here. I'll get a tow truck going. We're going to get this going. And I left him my wife's phone number because I knew she would be surprised at this because I had no cell service. She would be
Mm-hmm.
surprised that she didn't hear from me. And inside of they they got back. We tried everything we could. We had to leave the camper there. No, they hooked up the camper. They brought the camper back in one vehicle and then put me in with my bare necessities in another vehicle and got me back to Grand Marais within a good hour and a half from when I had called out.
Okay.
And I there was even, it was funny, right as I was getting my radio ready to call out, a forest ranger had come through the road nearby. And even that was weird. I didn't have the time to even turn around and try to get out to the road. I did get out to the road, but he was too far gone and I was trying
Okay.
to wave him down
So
and
yeah,
he had already gone by.
just to paint the picture, it's it's late winter, about as far north as you can go in Minnesota. You have no cell phone coverage. Everybody you're with has left. You're many, many miles from anywhere, and you have no heat, and your SUV just broke down.
And my SUV just broke down. And The
So
even the funnier part, I did get an immediate callback from a guy in Thunder Bay, Canada.
okay.
So that we the network that we're on there, this repeaters,
Mm-hmm.
I think you just need the Bayfield repeater, if I remember correctly. You can hit Thunder
Yep.
Bay because
Yep.
the Lake Superior there is so big. You have
Mm-hmm.
good bounce off the lake and lots of signal strength going in every direction from that repeater. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he
When I'm at my
called back
parents'
right away.
cabin on the South Shore
Okay.
with a handheld, I can reach Silver Bay because
Yeah,
it's literally right across the lake. I mean, the line of sight's awesome up there.
it
Uh,
is amazing. It's
but
if you've never experienced signals over water before,
mm-hmm.
that's a good spot. It's just I'd only heard about it till I got up there for the first time, and like you say, you can't believe what even 2.5 watts will get you
Mm-hmm.
is amazing up there. So on an HT, but
Yeah.
so anyways, they like I say, they came back and they immediately about faced, and they were actually home. They got me to Grand Marais. I did not. I spent 2 nights there till they finally got all the gasoline. They had to empty my tank completely, put in fresh gasoline, and even then, it ran rough till I got it all out of the
Mm-hmm.
injectors and everything. But I kept one sample, and then the first 5 gallons came back out, and I've never seen anything like it. I've got video of it, but you can see a clear separation of the good gasoline is floating on top, and whatever additives or whatever was in the bottom of the tank that I ended up with from that gas station was some of the sorriest looking stuff I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It was not in good shape, but
Right.
that it saved me. I mean, it was one of those deals where I didn't know what I was going to do. Luckily, I was hadn't started my new job yet, so I didn't need to be anywhere
Mm-hmm.
but except home. But you're still, at some point you're like, well, I'm, 5 hours away from home. How am I even gonna get there if I
Right.
can't get this thing running again? Plus I've got the camper. Plus it was, 3 or 4 nights of 20 below weather. And, it's just
Mm-hmm.
one of those deals where you feel very vulnerable in a real
Mm-hmm.
big hurry. And
Yeah.
having the radio, being able to pull that out and just start calling and getting that response like I did
Mm-hmm.
was invaluable.
Well, now naysayers could argue, well, yeah, radio helped him out, but that's because he was up there doing radio with a bunch of radio guys, and somebody nearby had a amateur radio. But that's also kind of the point of if you're going in a remote area or something or having more tools is having those tools and having people who you network with have those tools and those capabilities as well. You can't be a lone wolf situation for a self rescue like that. Ham radio won't work like that all the time, but if you do the preparedness side of knowing the area, knowing where repeaters are, knowing how to reach out and coordinating with people, whether you have a ham radio or not, when you go backpacking or canoeing in the boundary waters, let people know where you are, where you're going to be when you plan to get back out. That can keep you from getting a lot more trouble than you already find yourself in situations
Well,
like
yeah,
this.
you just made a perfect point. My brother and I, first of all, I won't go to the boundary waters without someone that I know after learning what I've learned in being in the boundary waters. I won't even go there with someone that doesn't have enough
Hmm.
skill to be able to go in there and do it.
Yep.
And my brother's one of those people, and we have meetings about where we're going.
Yeah. It's all the
We
prep
talk
work.
about where we're going. We leave maps with our wives. Here's where we're going to be. Here's where we're
Hmm.
going in. Here's where we're coming out. You do that with your check when you check in when you're going to get your permit. You let
Hmm.
them know that's as useful a tool as a ham radio.
Hmm.
You're there with like-minded people that understand what you're doing, and you're letting them know what you're doing. Just like when I go into this, go to the race with a bunch of ham operators. Well, yeah, we all know what we're doing and what we're getting into, and we're there to support one another and build a network. And it's one of the neatest things that you can't really put. It's hard to put it into words, but it's amazing how quickly you can send 10 ham operators into a pretty large remote area and have a large network almost
Right.
immediately set up, even if you don't have a repeater.
Yep.
You know, you
As long as
get,
you know what
get
you're doing.
10 guys that know what they're doing, and you don't have to be this crazy, expert, but you have just a technician's license and enough know-how to, with a dual band or even your HT, you can set up a network in a hurry, and it's a lot of fun. It's useful, and it's a lot of
Hmm.
fun to understand it and know how to do it. And that's one thing I really appreciate about learning what I've learned about ham radio so far.
Cool. Well, I hate to end it here, but
Yeah.
this call's about ready. I'm getting a warning right now that our time's up,
Okay.
and I got another Zoom call for another one of these interviews starting in a few minutes. So uh, if you'd like, I'd love to pick this up for a part two sometime when our time that. And just like that, the Zoom call ended. Fortunately, Pat's a friend of mine, and he has a cabin nearby my house, so later this summer, we'll meet up for a Parks on the Air activation and continue this conversation. If that's something you'd like to see, please let me know in the comments below. I have a few more of these a service within a hobby style videos I have coming up, and more I like to plan, so if you like this stuff, again, let me know in the comments below. And with that, we'll wrap up this video. As always, folks, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. 73.